It's on. It's on.
What do I do with it? There it is. Took a little quick.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. All right, cool. So anyway, thank you for the introduction. Before I begin, I did want to thank Mr. Logan for setting up the Solar Day. Setting up a novel idea. These things are usually very complicated, very hard to put together, and I really appreciate the fact that you took the time to do this for any authors. So thank you so much. And my name is Todd Sullivan, and I'm aware that most people are not aware of who I am. So this is going to be a very, very brief introduction to me and my writing. So my name is Todd Sullivan, and I wrote the Windshine Chronicles. The Windshine Chronicles is a medieval fantasy series that takes place in a medieval version of South Korea called South Korea. And the reason why it takes place in a... Can I take this off? And the reason why it takes place in the medieval version of South Korea, because I actually lived in Korea from 2009 to 2019, and then I moved from Korea to Taiwan, and then I was there for 2 years, and I moved back from Taiwan to Korea in 2021 to 2025. And so all of my published books take place in the medieval version of South Korea. All right, the first book is actually called Hollow Men. And in the Windshine Chronicles, the way it works is that you have these young men in different provinces who are going on these adventures in order to eliminate some kind of threat or some kind of evil in the land. In this first book, the main character is titled Hajun. So if you just imagine a Conan type figure, that's what Hajun is like. He's an Asian version of a Conan type figure, and he carries a very big sword on his back. The second book is called There Will Be One, and this character's name is Woo Jin. Most of the characters in the book are actually Korean, and Woo Jin is not as big as Hajun, but he's very strong and he's very fast. And his weapon of choice is the bow and arrow. He's basically an archer. So you have Hajun with the sword, and There Will Be One, Woo Jin with bow and arrow. And after I wrote these two, so I wrote Hollow Men in basically 2017, and it was picked up by Mocha Memoir Press in about 2018. This is a small little publisher in North Carolina. And it came out in 2019. And then right after Hollow Men, I wrote There Will Be One. And after I finished There Will Be One, I started writing the third book in the series. But I wanted the main character in the third book to be slightly different, because in the first two, you have these very strong, they're actually about 16, 17 years old, very strong young men. But I wanted this one to be basically the opposite of that. So this character has a severe case of scoliosis, and he is hunched over, he has a cane, and he cannot walk very well. And so originally, I was gonna name this story, all right, and they are going to be heroes. Originally, I was gonna name this story Dearth. I started writing this book in about 2019. I started writing this book, Dearth. Third book in the Windshine Chronicles. And of course, in 2020, the pandemic started. And so I wasn't really able to promote my writing when I was living in Taiwan. And so what I decided to do instead is, I decided to do a lot of podcasts. And so in 2020 and 2021, I did several dozen podcasts in order to promote my writing. And this is just examples of some of them here. And if you've ever done a podcast before, you know they ask you about yourself, they ask you about what you're writing, and then the last question they ask you is, what else are you writing right now? What else are you working on? And I told them that I'm working on a third book in the Windshine Chronicle called Dearth. And every time I said that, they would look at me kind of confused. They would not, I expected excitement or intrigue or curiosity, but what I didn't expect was confusion. And so, before I go on, I kind of figured that people didn't know what the word dearth meant, and maybe I'm wrong, but does anyone here, if you mind saying, what does dearth mean?
What does dearth mean?
Yeah, what does dearth mean? Yes.
wasteland.
Right, thank you. Yeah. Dearth. And dearth means a scarcity or lack of something, especially something essential or highly desired, such as a dearth of talent. In the third book, Blood Stew, which is actually Blood Stew now, Namgi has a dearth of physicality. He can't move very well. He's with a cane. Every movement hurts him, so he can't really go on these quests, which is the point of the novel. So when I realized that people weren't giving the right kind of feeling for the name Dirt, I decided to name the book Blood Stew. Now, this book actually came out in 2021. When I named it Blood Stew, again, I was only doing promoting online. I didn't really see the reaction of the title that people had to Blood Stew until I came back here to America. I moved back to America in March 2025, so about 6 or 7 months ago. And I started doing things like this, promoting like this. And when I had my books on the table, and people came up to me and they saw the title Blood Stew, what they said was, is this a horror book?
Yeah.
Is this a scary book? Why is it called Blood Stew? And I was kind of thinking about it. I was like, well, why would people here in America think that the title of the book, Blood Stew, is horror? And why didn't I realize that people here would think that the title is Blood Stew? Because again, I had been living in Korea and Taiwan from 2009 to 2025. So I realized that the issue, well, what I feel like the issue was, is a bit of culture shock and reverse culture shock. So, you know, if you ever traveled abroad before, you go lived abroad, there are things that people do in a foreign country that seems kind of surprising and shocking to you. But if you stay there long enough and you adapt to the culture, when you come back, all of a sudden things that you were once familiar with are now kind of surprising and shocking to you because you've been abroad for so long. And so when people were asking me if Blood Stew is horror or scary, and I was just wondering why they think that, I realized it's a bit of reverse culture shock. I didn't quite expect the American audience to think that it would be horror. And the reason why I thought that is because when I was living in Asia, I had many interesting meals in Asia, and I had become accustomed to it. And so for me, Blood Stew wasn't really a big deal. And I'm going to go through 3 meals that I had in Asia, which might help you realize why Blood Stew for me is kind of was like an ordinary title, but for Americans it might seem like it's a scary title. So my first trip to Asia, I was getting my Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing in Queens College in New York. And during the winter semester, I stayed in Tokyo. I was in Tokyo for 3 weeks studying Japanese authors. And so it's a study abroad program, but if anyone's ever studied, has anyone here ever studied abroad before? Anyone? Right, and you know it says study abroad, but mostly what you do when you study abroad is you drink. And so that's what we were doing. We were there for 3 weeks and we would go to different places. This is 17 years ago, so I look much, much younger. My hair is also much longer too. And these are the friends that I made when I was studying abroad. And the picture that's important is this one. The last picture to the right is called the izakaya. And the izakaya in Japan is similar to a hof in Korea. The hof in Korea is similar to a pub in England. And a pub in England is similar to a bar here in America. So there's, all of them, they serve food and they serve alcohol, but there's slight differences if you go to each one. So one night, my friends and I had gone out to a place called Shinjuku to go drinking. And then we came back to where we were living in Shibuya. And we were at izakaya and we ordered food. Anyone has ever been to Japan before? No? Alright, so you know in Asia they actually serve small dishes. The dishes are very small, so we ordered several small dishes. And one of the things we ordered was fish. Now, as I told Anne, I'm originally from New Orleans. And in New Orleans we have a lot of seafood. But it wasn't until I went to Asia that I actually got a fish that had the head and the tail attached to it. It kept the whole fish. And so that by itself was quite surprising to me. And the way it brings out the fish, and again, we had been drinking that night, but I noticed a movement on my table when I'm sitting there with my friends. And I remember this clearly. The first thing I thought was that I've been drinking way too much tonight because it seems like there's something on my table that's moving. And I'm looking at it, and suddenly the fish on the table starts to flap. It starts flapping. And so my friends and I, we raised our hand and we called the waiter because we assumed is there something wrong with this? Because there's a live fish on our table. And the way it comes over, he has like a little smile on his face, and he does like this with chopsticks. And the way it works is that the fish has been filleted, so you literally eat the fish as it suffocates on your table. That's the actual meal. So you eat the fish alive. And that was my first kind of extreme meal in Asia about 17 years ago. So back to my point. When I named this book Blood Stew, my mind, which has been in Asia for so long, at this time I had been in Asia for 11 years, I had so many different kind of meals, I wouldn't have thought that this title would be scary or horror. I expected intrigue, curiosity, excitement, but not horror. So that's my first meal, my first kind of interesting meal in Asia. And then I moved to Korea in 2009, and I moved, you can't see it there, to a small little island called Jeju-do. And I lived in Jeju for 5 years, from 2009 to about 2015, 14. And this is a picture of me in Jeju-do. It's called Hawaii of Korea. It's a very beautiful island. There's like a volcano in the center of the island. And back in the background, there's a very expensive resorts. This is me in Jeju. And Jeju is known for many things. The one thing it's known for is Mao. Mao in Korean is horse. So Jeju is known for horses. And if you ask Jeju people, the horses in Korea are, when Genghis Khan was coming from Mongolia, conquering Asia, and then parts of Europe, he would conquer a place and then leave horses there for, I guess, to continue his conquering. So there are many horses in Jeju. So Mao is horse and gogi is meat. And so what Jeju is also known for is horse meat restaurants. And as you see here, this is raw horse chobab, a sushi, raw horse sashimi. And then you don't see in this picture, but before you start your meal, they give you a small little cup, and there's like a red liquid in the cup. And when me, my friends and I first started going to horse restaurants, we thought the liquid was blood. That's what we thought we were drinking. But it wasn't until later when I went for a Korean person, he explained it to me. Actually, what it is that they take the horse stomach and they squeeze it, and bile comes out, and you put that in a cup, and this is the first thing you drink when you have a horse meat meal, a cup of bile. And actually, the horse meat restaurants are really delicious. They're really good. So you have the raw meat, and it's actually raw. It's not like medium rare. It's not like rare. It's just raw meat. And then you have the grilled pork, and then you have the horse stew. So once again, when I came up with the title Blood Stew, by this time I had been living in Asia for 11 years. To me, Blood Stew, I wouldn't have thought scary or horror. Intrigue, curiosity, excitement, but not horror and not scary. And so the last thing, so when I was in Jeju, I worked in two high schools, Pyeongsan Godomhakyo and Sungsan Godomhakyo, which just means high school in Korean. And this is at one of the field days, the sports days that they had. Again, this is 16 years ago, so I look quite young, especially in that picture. And in the middle of Jeju Island, there's a volcano, Hwasan. San is just mountain in Korean. And one day at lunch, I sit down, and the teacher across from me, before I start eating, he told me, before you start eating, know that you're eating something called blood stew. And I was like, okay, that's fine. So I ate it, and blood stew is Samjoko. That's what it's called in Korean, Samjoko. Blood stew Korean most likely refers to Samjoko, a hearty Korean soup made from congealed ox cow blood and vegetables in a savory beef bone broth, traditionally eaten as a hingo liqueur. Another related dish is sundeguk, a soup featuring Korean blood sausages rather than just coagulated blood. They're using the same flavor base of beef broth and savory ingredients. So this is what I had at lunch in the schools that was a teacher at, and I had this many times in Korea. And it looks like this. It's actually really delicious. It doesn't matter, this picture isn't the greatest picture in the world. It's actually a really delicious thing to eat. So, just to wrap up my talk, now that I'm back in America, and I realized, well, I'm starting to remember again, that we don't do things like, we don't eat animals as they die on our tables. We don't eat raw meat or drink a cup of bao. We don't eat samjiko, which is coagulated blood in your stew. I'm starting to realize once again why it is that people here would think that blood stew is like horror or scary, but it's not. It's just an adventure story. It's about young men trying to become heroes. It's actually very uplifting, and that's actually it. That's the extent of my talk. So I think Q&A now. Thank you. So yeah, I think if anyone has any questions, you can ask now. Yes.
So what is your next project?
The next project. So currently I'm working on a memoir. So I was in Asia for, altogether 17 years. And it's called From Improbable to Impossible. It's about my experiences starting off in Japan and ending in Korea, finally, over a 17-year period. So that is my current project, a memoir of my experiences in Asia. Yes?
Have you thought of doing any graphic novels?
Actually, I would love to do a graphic novel. I mean, I would need...
This seems like this would lend itself to...
Yeah, you know, people have always told me that when they read my books, it feels like a movie in their mind, that they see it as more like a film in their mind. And so yeah, I would love to. I mean, this is, well, it's not all that easy, but yeah, if I had someone who was interested in doing that, I would definitely love to do a graphic novel, a movie, what have you. Definitely so. Yes?
I was just wondering how your teaching career, thank you, your teaching career affected, or did that weave itself into your books at all? Or did your students read or critique your books?
Well, the thing is that, again, I was actually going really fast, but there's not a lot of time I have here. But the idea is that the young men are trying to go off and be heroes, which is be, in this society, it's like the top 1% in society. And honestly, in Korea and Taiwan, when I taught, a lot of times the students were always trying, it's really competitive, more than you can imagine. They were always trying to be the very, very top of the class. So I think teaching these very competitive students is why I ended up keeping, like my characters are all teenagers. And so I think that had big influence of me writing these books, teaching these extremely competitive students is why I ended up creating characters the way I did. Yes?
Are any of your books published in Korean as well?
No, they're not. I wish they would. I wish they would be. That would be fantastic. But no, I don't have any books published in Korea. Maybe in the future. Yeah, maybe in the future. Yes?
So what led you to Southeast Asia?
Well, that's a very long answer. That's why I'm writing the memoir. But really, when I went to Tokyo after doing my master's program, I completely fell in love with the country. If you haven't been there, you should go there. When I went there in 2008, I knew I would go back to Asia. And so you just have to go to Tokyo. It's a really fantastic, very interesting place to visit and to live. So definitely, I advise everyone here, go to Tokyo. And then you might end up wanting to stay in Asia for a longer period of time.
Any other questions? No?
I have a question.
Okay.
So the book Blood Stew, and yes, I was a little scared of it initially with the title. I'm like, oh no, am I opening up just gore? No, and it's excellent. Question is, you mentioned when you were in South Korea, it's all about excellence, being the top. And can you tell me how you feel like your book with a person who is disabled or a person who has the difficulties, what could be learned from that?
Well, in Namgi, as you notice, as you're reading I don't want to give it away, but when I did teach the disabled students in the class, there were quite a few that I did teach over the 16 years. They had to always try much harder than everyone else to exist in a society that was extremely competitive. So it's really rough for them. It's really difficult for them. And so, like in the book, just keep trying. Everything you can figure out in order to try to achieve this goal. For them, it's be a hero, but wherever your goal is, just keep pushing that. And the people who have physical disabilities that taught in Korea definitely kept pushing themselves. They did not ever stop. And just really quick, there actually is a very popular show in Korea, I don't know if it's here, about a detective with autism. It's a K-pop, it's a Korean drama, a detective with autism. And it's become a much more embraced aspect of Korean society to embrace autism. And so it's really been well received. So just keep pushing. I think that's the message that I hope the book gives to people with physical disabilities.
Any other questions?
Okay.
All right, give them a hand.
Yes.